Welcome to our latest and greatest edition of Better Together Arizona. I am super excited to be with Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer, because I had it wrong. I had to ask. It was going to go Ricker, but how are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
Do you prefer?
Because this is the greatest. This is the latest and greatest, meaning that all previous episodes will pale in comparison to this coming episode.
They were the latest and greatest of their time, but as this is the newest.
But this is the end. This is the end of history right here. This is it. Wrap the podcast
we're
up.
We're gonna hope that this is not the end.
Then it's a steep descent after this.
Please tell me that this is not the end. And that's why I have you on the show today, is because we don't want it to be the end.
For me personally, it's important to vote because my ancestors fought for the right to do so. It's important to vote because it's a way to stand up for something and stand up for what you believe in. Register and learn more at yourvoteisyourvoice.com.
So I think that your job is fascinating, and I also absolutely believe that most people don't understand what you do as the Maricopa Recorder. So can you tell folks what it is you're up to?
So my position is an elected position, and I was elected in 2020, and it's actually a partisan elected position, which strikes some people as peculiar that some of these positions are partisan elected positions, but it is what it is, and that's a whole different conversation. And I have three main statutory responsibilities. The first is recording of public records, which is where I get the title from. Most of that relates to real estate, so if you refinance or buy a new home in the next 4 months, you'll get your very own Stephen Richer stamp on the title at the top of your deed. The second is voter registration. I'm responsible for registering all voters in Maricopa County and for doing all list maintenance. So things like when people move, when they change their partisan affiliation, if somebody dies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third is I am responsible for the early voting component of election and administration. And as probably all your listeners know, in Arizona, we like early voting, and early voting usually constitutes 80 to 90% of the total vote in any given election. So I'm responsible for that. So if you mail back your ballot, or if you take a mail ballot and you drop it off, I'm responsible for those components of the election.
Okay, so two things I want to follow up with that very thoughtful delivery.
Thank you.
Maricopa County accounts for about 60% of the population, is that right?
That's right. So we're the second largest voting jurisdiction in the United States. We have about 2.5 million registered voters. We're behind only Los Angeles County. But in Arizona, we're by far the biggest county of the 15 counties, and we do make up about 60% of the voting population of the state of Arizona, exactly as you said. 60%
of the voting population in Arizona, and the way that we split from how people are registered is 35% Republican, 35% independent, and 32% Democrat?
That's about right. Republicans have an advantage still, and it's about 3 to 5% over Democrats, and then we do have a very large independent, party not designated population. And then we also have three other recognized political parties. That's the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, and the No Labels Party. But they together, I think, make up only about, I'll say 70,000 registrants throughout the state. And No Labels was thinking about running a presidential candidate, but they don't have anyone running. Is that correct? That's right. They decided not to. I think that they had conversations with people like Senator Manchin from West Virginia, and including our own Senator Sinema here in Arizona, but they ultimately decided not to. And in fact, they're not running anyone, so there is no Labels candidate on the general election ballot here in Arizona. Okay. So thank you for explaining all the things you do. And I also feel like there's a number of misconceptions, right, about what your job is. What?
And I had the pleasure, we were talking about this before we started filming, that I went through one of the tours that you give at the recorder's office with our dear friends at JCRC. And I was really amazed at all of the safety protocols that you have put in to ensure that every ballot is counted, and also that there's no shenanigans. Can you talk about?
Yeah. So a few things I want to unpack there. And the first is that this is available to any member of the public, not just Angela, because Angela's great, although you are great.
Clearly I'm great.
The organization's great and JCRC's great. But if anyone wants a tour of the facility, they can contact my office and they can come get a tour of the facility, because we've appreciated over the last few years that a lot of people have interest in election administration. A lot of people have questions in election administration, and that's perfectly welcome. That's wonderful even, and we want to be a resource to those people. So if it's not coming and doing a tour, you can watch a virtual tour online. You can email us any questions you have about election administration. We have lots of videos, we have lots of articles, reports. We want to get more information into the hands of Maricopa County voters because, like I said, we've been at the center of so much of this conversation about election administration. The second point that you were kind to mention is a lot of care goes into the election administration process, and that means care in terms of making sure that people who are lawful registered voters can vote. That's very important to us. And it also means care in terms of making sure that the votes are counted accurately, and it also means care in terms of making sure that your ballot is secure and that it doesn't get interfered with, and that it makes it through the process, and that the results that are produced at the end are valid results that the public can have confidence in.
Awesome. So let's dive a little deeper into making sure that every ballot is counted. Can you walk us through how your office handles the verification of mail-in ballots? And then again, you've put a lot of safeguards in place. What are some of these safeguards that are in place to make sure that you're preventing fraudulent submissions?
Right. I mentioned that Arizona, we like early voting.
We do.
In fact, we were a pioneer in early voting. Arizona allowed for no excuse vote by mail beginning in 1992 is when the state legislature enabled that. And it's grown and it's grown and it's grown such that it constitutes, like I said, about 80 to 90% of people in Maricopa County vote through an early ballot. Now that can mean a number of things. That could mean you get a ballot by mail and you return it by mail. You get a ballot by mail and you drop it off at a drop box. You get a ballot by mail and you drop it off at a voting location. But regardless of which of those methods you choose, you're getting a ballot by mail if you are a registered voter. So let's back up and start there. You must be a registered voter in order to participate in the process. We don't just send out ballots to random addresses. We don't just say, hey, you can come pick up a ballot at the street corner or something like this. You must be a registered voter, because for there to be a vote cast, it must be tied to a registered voter. So you have to be a registered voter. And what does that mean? That means that we check to make sure that you're at least 18 years of age. We check to make sure that you're a real person with a social security number and not just Mickey Mouse or your pet or something like that.
And that you're live, you're still living, right?
That you're still alive. We make sure that
heartbeat
you're
matters.
a United States citizen. So we have a documented proof of citizenship requirement here in Arizona. So we make sure that you have an address that we can actually send mail to. So all of those things go into the process before we even send a mail ballot to you. Now, when we send a mail ballot packet to you, it goes to that address that we've confirmed with you, goes out in a yellow envelope, and inside it has your ballot, and that ballot is specifically designed such that it can't be forged easily. It has certain timing and alignment and security marks on it. And then you have a green return envelope. Now, your ballot must come back in that green return envelope. If you just take a loose ballot and you drop it off on our doorstep
It's not being counted.
It's not being counted. It has to come back in that green return envelope. And if you look at that green return envelope, you'll see it's 1-to-1. It's assigned to you as a voter, and it'll have your name, it'll have your address. You must use that green return envelope. Don't use anyone else's, don't use your spouse's, don't use your neighbors or anything like that. You put it in there, and that green return envelope has a barcode on it. So as soon as you send that back, we scan that barcode. And that barcode is what allows us to track your ballot, so that you can track your ballot through the whole process, but it's also what makes sure that you don't vote more than once. So when we scan that barcode, we load a vote to your profile. So if you tried to show up and vote in person then after you sent
You'd
that
be like,
back,
no, we've already got you
you've
out.
already received another one. Or if you asked for a second ballot because you said you spilled coffee on your first one, we would know. Or if you voted in person already and then you sent back your mail ballot, we wouldn't be able to take that mail ballot back because you would have already had a vote
Because you're
loaded
already
to your
counted.
profile.
So my wife and I like to fill out our ballots together and talk about this. Like, what if I accidentally pick up her envelope for my ballot?
So you will cause a little more work for us because another feature of that green envelope is that you must sign. You know this.
Right.
And so you sign it. And so we'll see a signature that, what's your wife's name?
Sherry.
So we'll see Angela's name, but it's Sherry listed, and we'll be like, this. Not only does the signature not look right, where this isn't even the same name.
Right.
And so what we will do in those instances we will look to see if it's a household swap.
Okay.
So we'll pull up other voters at the voting location, and then we'll identify that ballot packet and see if you switched it. But you can make our life easier by just using the green return envelope that has your name on it. Because one of the other security features is we check that signature against past signatures that you've sent back to us. So anytime you voted by mail in the past,
Sure.
anytime when you originally registered to vote, anytime you've changed your address or changed your political party, we capture an image of the signature that you send to us and we load it into your voter profile. So after we scan that barcode, we then take a look at your signature and we look at the 3 most recent signatures we have on file for you, and we make sure that that signature is consistent, and it goes through multiple layers of review there. So that's another security feature, and that's why we ask you not to swap with your spouses.
So I'll do my best.
Well, do better,
I just won't.
do better
Do
than
better.
that.
You can do better,
than
Angela.
that.
Do better. No, but
I-
like this is really fascinating because you really, essentially, you have protocols in place. So you're going back 6-8 years in the voter records to make sure.
Sometimes 50 years.
Okay, that's fantastic.
And so a lot of people will ask, well, what if my signature stinks? And we say that's okay, as long as it consistently stinks. So if your signature is ugly, as long as it's consistently ugly. What if my signature has evolved over time? My signature has gotten sloppier and sloppier.
Sure.
We can trace that evolution.
Okay.
Now, what if we can't match up your signature
Right.
and it goes through first level and it goes through second level and we still say we don't think this signature is consistent? Then what we will do is we will contact you. First, we will call the number that you put on that green return envelope.
Right.
And we'll use any other means we have at our disposal. We'll find out. We'll call them. We'll say, Angela, did you return this? And you'll say yes. And then we'll say, well, what's your mother's maiden name or the last 4 of your social?
Got it.
And you'll confirm your identity through that process. So that's what if we can't confirm the signature. And then once we do that, then it goes to a bipartisan team. Only then is the green envelope actually sliced open, goes to a bipartisan team. They take it out of the envelope, then they put it into a different stack, and that's where the secret ballot is born, but it's still kept in batches, and all those batches have logs such that if we ever need to fully sort of recreate the life of a ballot, we can trace it from the whole process, and then ultimately goes to tabulation. We can talk about that.
So there's a whole lot that goes on just to make sure that I'm the one that sent this in and I did not accidentally swap my envelope. And then it goes to a bipartisan group of, Republican and Democrat. Do you have
Right.
independents that are a part of this too, or just
For
Republican?
certain steps, we can have independents as part of the bipartisan team, and other steps, as outlined by state law, it has to be a Republican. It has,
to be a Democrat.
But the important point here is that there is no jurisdiction in the United States that is run entirely by Republicans or entirely by Democrats. Every state bakes bipartisanship into the process. So not only do we have bipartisan workers, but we have bipartisan political party observers. We have bipartisan signer offers on different components of tabulation. And so that tension is something that is actually welcomed and appreciated by election officials because it all sides of the process.
Well, and it
are
leads to
being-
transparency,
yeah.
right? We're all seeing this process, and no one is being left out in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and then talk about curing. Yeah, what's the next step after that goes to the bipartisan?
So after it goes to the bipartisan team, they take it out of the envelope. Then they'll put it in stacks of 200. They'll make sure that the ballot style is the right style, such that you returned your general election ballot for the general election. Believe it or not, we've had people who never got around to voting in the primary, and then they take their primary ballot and they put it in their general election. It's like, we can't, that was a few months ago, people. We make sure that the ballot's not damaged in any way, such that you didn't tear it, you didn't spill on it, you don't have gum on it, or anything else that could interfere with tabulation. And then once that batch is ready, Then it'll go to tabulation, and it'll be read through Scantron machines, just like we used when we were all taking standardized tests when we were in high school. And all it does is it reads ovals. So it reads, for this presidential contest, did you fill in the oval for Vice President Harris, or did you fill in the oval for President Trump? And then
Former President Trump.
Does he still get president?
I don't know.
I
think he should get former president.
Is it President Clinton? Let's take one that nobody disputes.
It will just say Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, right?
Oh, on the ballot?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I just wanna make sure.
No, it won't.
Yeah.
Nobody has titles
Good.
on the ballot. So if I'm an incumbent, like it wouldn't have had my title on the ballot or anything like that.
I think that's important.
Yeah. So, which oval did you fill in? So, and then it's read through the tabulation equipment. The tabulation equipment has to be both state and federally certified. It has to be tested by bipartisan teams both before and after the election. And then actually the political parties themselves offer up Republicans and Democrats that they want working this process, and they do a hand count audit after the tabulation of a statistically significant random set of ballots that they make sure.
So it is automatically audited.
So for instance, in the much discussed 2020 election, after the election, Republicans and Democrats working in bipartisan teams hand count audited about 47,000 votes, and those match the machine tabulation 100%. And if it doesn't match 100%, then you start looking into that and you figuring out, and you do hand count more and more and more. So there's lots of tests in all stages of the process. I talked about signature verification before. There's audits of that process too. Right. So nobody's ever just like, let's flip on the tabulators and hope that they read the ovals correctly and just, whatever it says, and that's it, sort of thing. And the other thing to point out is that in Arizona, we have 100% paper ballots. This is a thing that's been a popular topic, and lots of people say, well, we should have paper ballots, and we say, great, we have paper ballots. We've long had paper ballots, and the reason we like having paper ballots is because if you all this talk about hacking and internet connection and all that, well, you'll always have the paper ballots that you can go back to as an auditable paper trail that can always be tested.
Fantastic.
That was a lot of stuff. See the website for the full tour.
No, but it's important.
Or come do a full tour.
Absolutely.
But it hopefully gives your listeners a sense of just some of the checks and controls that are built into the process. And, my goal here isn't to impress upon you the details of every step, but just to impress upon you that there are checks and controls all through the process. And if you have questions, we're a resource for you.
What I've enjoyed about your time as recorder is it seems like your office has really, really done a good job and a consistent job of reaching out, being available, and making sure that the public has the opportunity to, again, come down and take a tour and ask questions. And there's how-to tutorials and videos. And don't you have like a live feed that runs too?
Yes,
right?
We have a live feed. You can go to our website, elections.maricopa.gov, and you can go to the information tab and you can see live video feed, or actually it's a transparency tab now, even sort of playing into that.
Yeah.
So when I took office, I was a business person, I'm a lawyer, I expected to be focusing on sort of the nuts and bolts of administration and process improvement. But really, if anything has defined my time in office, has been just answering more questions, getting more information out to people, just because since the 2020 election, and really in Maricopa County and Arizona in particular, so many people have had an interest in election administration. And so we've tried to do everything under the sun, everything within our abilities to get more information out there. That even includes actually something that Josh just created a few weeks ago, which is you can click through our facility just like you can click through model homes.
Yeah.
And you can see all the different aspects, and you can even put on a VR headset and walk through, and then you can touch different items and it'll like pop up with a text box and tell you more about the items. So, but if there's anything else that we can do as we approach this all-important election, then please let us know.
Quick question. Do you think that this should be a partisan office?
No, I'm not. I don't even think it should be an elected office. And America is a bit anomalous on that, where most other countries have non-elected civil servants be election administrators. and I'm sure there's some wisdom to having them be elected. But if somebody said, Stephen, you make the call, I would say certainly not partisan elected and probably not even elected. And I would say they more get appointed by an elected official or something like that. And so I think I would put more bureaucratic layers between an elected position and election officials. But it's like that way, not just in Arizona, but in most of the United States have elected officials in charge of elections. And yeah, if you say that to Europeans, it really blows their mind. But lots of stuff blows their mind because Europeans, most of their elections are very federalized.
Right.
So run by the national government rather than by the local
locals.
government. They vote on far fewer offices. They vote on, sometimes they don't even, for Prime Minister of the UK, you're not even voting for the person, you're voting for the party. And then the party
nominates
person,
who the person is,
and then
right?
they fill out other seats in there too. And here we were joking about beforehand, but we vote for a mine inspector, we vote for a recorder, we vote for an assessor, we vote for school boards, we vote for fire districts, we vote for judges, we vote for ballot propositions. And you were asking about ballot fatigue, and we here in Arizona, we love democracy, and so we put a lot of burden on the individual voter to make it through this whole ballot, and it takes a lot of time to be knowledgeable about the 85 plus items that most Arizonans will have on the ballot in November.
How many pages do you think the ballot is going to be?
So depending on how you define page, I'll say
Front and back?
4. It'll have one card that will be front and back, and then it'll have another card that will be front and back.
4 of those, or just two total?
So
two front and back?
2 cards, 4 pages.
Okay. All right. I was
don't know why
thinking,
those-
I heard 4 and I
Yeah.
thought it was 4 front and back, so
Yeah.
a total of 8 pages.
So, and that presents some complications in terms of administration, just because it's 2 sheets of paper to deal with
Sure.
instead of 1 sheet of paper. It's more costly. It's another thing that we have to make sure in every envelope. But it's also, voters need to send back both. Now,
What if you only send back 1?
So, I encourage you all to think about all the contests. But if you only send back 1, we will tabulate just that 1.
Okay.
Whether it's the first one or whether it's
the
the
last
second one, we will tabulate all the contests. And so, yeah, and that's true if you don't vote contests. So even if you just vote for the presidential contest, and then you send
Everything
back
else is
everything
blank.
else, and all the other 80 plus contests are blank, we still tabulate that presidential contest.
But I'm glad that you're calling out the number. There's 80 plus opportunities here to have your voice heard, right? And to use the power of your voice through voting, which I think is just so incredibly important. And for us, I always like to say, if you don't vote, you're not participating in what the future of this great state is going to look like, right? And so we are concerned about ballot fatigue. I'm like, okay, that's 2 front and back, so got it, as opposed to 4 front and back. So that's good to know. But also, I want to encourage folks to start at the bottom, right? We were talking about this before we started the show, and I'm like, to me, it's kind of like what my parents taught me when I was a kid. It was like you have to do your chores before you get to go out and have a good time. And so if you're really excited about whoever your candidate for president is, that's awesome. But do your chores first and, make it through all the local election issues that are really, really important. There's a number of issues that are on the ballot that are really going to help determine how our state moves forward on so many things.
Some city ballot initiatives, some county ballot initiatives. For instance, for all Maricopa County voters, you will decide on whether or not to extend the 1/2-cent sales tax for transportation. I think it's a 1/2-cent sales tax that's been in effect for some time. So that's on the ballot. We'll have some cities that will have some ballot initiatives that will be on there. And then we have some statewide ones pertaining to election administration, pertaining to abortion, pertaining to minimum wage, I think is on the ballot.
And open primaries.
So pertaining to election administration, pertaining to open primaries. So lots and lots of stuff that is on the ballot beyond the presidential election, which is, of course, I think obviously the featured race and drives a lot of this. And we also have a U.S. Senate contest on the ballot as well. And so lots of exciting stuff on the ballot.
Without a doubt. So what happens if I'm registered for the permanent early ballot? I get it. I forget to turn it in. What is the process on election day?
Yeah.
And are these ballots counted last? That's what I think a friend of mine told me, that if you have a pebble,
So
it's turned in.
all good questions.
Yeah.
So let's first talk about, you receive a ballot by mail. You don't have to vote by mail. You can show up and vote in person early, get a new ballot printed, fill it out, vote there. You can show up and vote on election day. You don't have to bring your mail ballot with you. As soon as you check in at a voting location, so you'll go to a kiosk, you'll present your Arizona driver's license, you'll scan it, somebody will come by, check your identification. As soon as you do that, it'll load a vote to your profile because you're in the process of voting, meaning that if you tried to mail back that mail ballot,
It's no
it
longer
would
valid.
already be deactivated. So you don't have to bring that with you. You can bring that with you if you want, or you can use it for your birdcage or whatever else you choose to use it for, or just as a reference guide. So you can always show up and vote in person, even if you've received a mail ballot. Now, if you've received a mail ballot and it's 2 days before the election, please do not mail it back through USPS. We must have it in our possession by 7 p.m. on election day.
Okay.
And so 2 days is running it a little bit risky, that we might get that the day after election day, and then we wouldn't be able to move that forward. So if you haven't voted 2 days before election day, either take your mail ballot and drop it off at a drop box or drop it off at a voting location, or just go and vote in person and get a new ballot printed and vote in person. So that's that. In terms of the question about what gets tabulated and what gets released when. So at 8 p.m. on election night, 1 hour after polls have closed and voting is ending, those are when the first results are released. And typically that will be about 65% of all the results will be available right at 8 p.m. on election night.
And are those all early ballots?
Those are going to be all the early ballots that we have received by the Saturday before Election Day Tuesday.
Okay.
So if we receive your early ballot by Saturday before Election Day Tuesday, we can scan it in, we can do signature verification, we can audit it, we can send it to the bipartisan team that takes it out of the envelope, and we can send it ahead to tabulation. We'll tabulate it. Now, no results are reported or even run until 8 p.m. on election night, but that will already be tabulated and it'll be ready to go right at 8 p.m.
Okay.
From 8 p.m. until the end of the night on election night, however long that goes, will be those people who vote in person on election day. So get a new ballot printed, stand in line, get a new ballot printed, and feed it into the tabulators that are at the voting location on election day. After polls have closed, bipartisan poll workers will remove the memory devices from those tabulators that are at the voting locations. They drive them from wherever they are in the county to the central tabulation center, and they load those results into the server, and those results are reported out over the night. So from 8 p.m. till, let's say, 1 a.m., we add people who vote in person on election day. The tail, which usually is about 15%, so it's election night's over and we're at 80 to 85% of the results are available. Well, for close contests, you still need to know about, the news networks won't call it if it's very close and there's still 15% outstanding. Those are the ballots that are the early ballots that are dropped off on election day or the day before, because to verify that those ballots are coming from people who they should be coming from and that they're valid, we still have to do those processes that we've talked about
And that's
before.
why it takes so long.
Yep.
Got it.
And unlike many states, look, I can tell you that California will be called right at 8 p.m. because there will be such a significant margin between the Democratic nominee for president and the Republican nominee for president. Let's name names. Harris will almost certainly have so many more votes
Right, that
than
it's
Trump
easy to call.
in California that news networks are going to say, I don't even care if it's 30% in. Based off of our statistical model, we can call that right away.
Sure.
Utah, they're going to call for Donald Trump the second any results are released.
Not Arizona.
Not Arizona, not Nevada, not Georgia, not
Michigan,
Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin. And maybe
and
North
we
Carolina.
happen to have the privilege of being not only one of those very few close states, but we're in the westernmost time zone, and we're a male-heavy state, unlike some of those eastern states. So it will, if it's super, super close in terms of the Electoral College, I suspect we'll be coming down to Arizona and Nevada, who happens to be another male-heavy state that is closely contested in the western United States.
And so results not being called in those two states likely until the next day or even a day after, depending on how close it is.
Depending on how close it is.
Got it. And it's fascinating. So they take out the memory card and they have to drive it in. So the rural counties get counted last, right? Because they're driving it in.
Well, it depends how close it is. So the rural parts of Maricopa County will be the last that will report on election night. So if you voted at a voting location in Buckeye, let's say, an hour plus drive to get to downtown Phoenix where our central tabulation is. So yeah, that won't be loaded until probably closer to like 1 a.m. on election night.
Got it. So how can Arizonans do more to be supportive? Like, how can folks sign up to be poll workers or to volunteer for this remarkable democratic process?
Yeah, lots of ways to get involved. So it's a buffet of options, and we invite you to the buffet. You can, if you want to go really gung-ho, you can join us as a temporary worker. So we hire around 3,000 temporary workers here in Maricopa County. And that can be anything from driving a box truck for us, to working at a voting location, to doing signature verification, to being part of that bipartisan team that takes it out of the envelope. We need Republicans, we need Democrats, we need independents, all of the above. These are paid positions, usually ranging from $15 to $20 an hour. So these are paid temporary positions, and they can be from 1 day to 1 or 2 months. There are also opportunities to be a observer with your political party. So let's say you're a rah-rah Republican, we'll just say, and you want to help the Republican Party out. Well, the Republican Party is allowed an observer at every single voting location and at the central facility. So if you go to your county party and say, I want to be an observer, they'll likely say, great, you'll be our designated observer at this location. Now, typically, those aren't paid positions, but that's up to the party. What are other ways that you can get involved? You can get involved by just sharing information with your neighbors about the process. You can ask us questions. You can go online to our website, watch the process, and just become a more informed consumer, not of the races themselves, but of the process. And that would be greatly helpful to us because, we're a county of about 4.5 million people, and though we try our darndest to share as much information as we can, we have not hit all 4.5 million people. Part of the reason why I'm here today is such that we can hit, more and more of that 4.5 million. I think this has about 4 million listeners on average, right?
4.2,
okay.
depends.
Right. So that helps us. That makes a big dent.
We dip a little in the summertime.
Understandable. Yeah. But so anything anyone can do to help on that front as well. And then there are the candidates themselves. I mean, that's sort of, I guess, the most sort of traditional and core way to be involved in the democratic process is you can go work for not just the presidential candidate, you can vote for your state legislators candidate, congressional candidates, county candidate, or one of these ballot initiatives. For instance, I'll just use it because it's high profile. The abortion side will be putting out a campaign for, and there will be a campaign against the initiative as well. So there will undoubtedly be lots of volunteer opportunities for that too.
Awesome. Last question. Tuesday, November 5th is election day. What should people going to the polls to vote? What should they expect?
So as long as we're talking dates, I'm going to hit October 7th is the last day to be registered. So October 7th. We do not have same-day voter registration. That is different from some states. You must be registered 29 days in advance. On election day, go to locations.maricopa.vote, locations.maricopa.vote. If you need to find a voting location, you can see wait times at different voting locations. You can see which one's close to work, which one's close to home. You can go to any single one of these in Maricopa County. There will be approximately 240 voting locations in Maricopa County, so you can go to that. The other thing that we always encourage people to do is if you vote by early ballot, vote by mail ballot, please go to beballotready.vote. That's beballotready.vote, and you can track your ballot through all stages of the process. You can also sign up for text message ballot tracking alerts. And also, please do that before we get to October, so you can make sure all your voter registration information
So that everything's
is in the same
current. I
place.
literally
Yeah.
did it. I double checked this morning.
Great.
I'm current. I'm ready to go.
Great.
I'm
So-
excited. Can
so
you tell?
that great. I love it. So we don't get to November 4th and you're like, oh, where's my mail ballot? And then you forgot that you moved, but you never
updated
changed your address
and-
or
yeah.
something like that. And then you're like, oh, shucks, I have to go in person. And then, you're not somebody who has Tuesday off. And so the work day gets away from you. And then you get to like 6:30 and you're still at your desk working. You're just like, you know what? I'll get them next time. So you don't get to that situation.
Got it. Anything else you want to add?
You mentioned ballot fatigue. Yeah, if you show up and vote in person on election day, get ready to be overwhelmed.
Wear comfortable shoes.
Yeah, because people are going to be filling out their ballots for a while in every individual booth, and the county's done a lot to try and to account for that. But just don't go in there thinking that I just marked the presidential contest. There's a lot, and so I would say, as I said with the other stuff, get ahead of the game, see what's going to be on your ballot. You can go to that same beballotready.vote website and you can see your sample ballot. So you can see exactly what your ballot will look like. You can start researching those races. You can even print it so that you can have it as a cheat sheet if you want to. It's not cheating. As a reference sheet.
As a reference guide, yeah.
If you want to have that there, so you don't have to be like, oh, shoot, I thought I researched my candidates for state house, but now I can't remember.
I don't remember.
So, yeah.
Got it. Anything else you want to add?
Just that I think it's both scary and exciting to be an Arizonan right now because, as everyone knows who watches the Diamondbacks, every single commercial is no longer Morgan & Morgan Law Firm or the husband and wife law team, but it's political commercials because we're in the eye of the hurricane, the political hurricane right now. And so, it's an exciting time to be an Arizona voter in terms of our voice really mattering. But also there's going to be a lot of emotion. There's going to be a lot of intensity. And so let's just keep our humanity and let's do Arizona proud.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. You're awesome.
My name is Gabe Hagan. I am the co-founder of Brick Road Coffee here in Tempe. I believe it's important to vote because our rights are on the line. Visit yourvoteisyourvoice.com to register to vote and learn more about the upcoming election.